Let's explore autistic history and the Autism Wars. This is part 77 of a series. I'm jumping right back into the Wikipedia entry we left off on applied behavior analysis and going straight into the views of the autistic community. And then after that, the next section will be use of aversives, and we'll start getting into a little bit of the history of electric shocks in the United States of America through the Judge Rotenberg Center, JRC. But we'll get to that going forward. So, views of the autistic community. The value of eliminating autistic behaviors is disputed by proponents of neurodiversity who maintain that it forces autistic people to mask their true personalities on behalf of a narrow conception of normality. Masking is associated with suicide, unaliving, and poor long-term mental health. Some autism advocates contend that it is cruel to try and make autistic people normal without consideration for how this may affect their well-being. Instead, these critics advocate for increased social acceptance of harmless autistic traits and therapies focused on improving quality of life. A 2020 study examined perspectives of autistic adults that received ABA as children and found that the overwhelming majority reported that behaviorist methods create painful lived experiences. The ABA led to the erosion of the true actualizing self, and that they felt they had a lack of self-agency within interpersonal experiences. I see this so much in the kids. Oh my gosh, autistic adult. I'm old, so they're younger, but the younger generation, I see this, and I even see it in, oh yeah, it's not great. All right, here it says, in response to many of the criticisms towards ABA from members of the autistic community, some behavior analysts, I think I might have said it right, have referenced Damian Milton's theory of the double empathy problem, saying that behavior analysts are just different and think differently from most other people, consequently feeling misunderstood and discriminated against by members of the autistic community. All right, next up is use of aversives. Some embodiments of applied behavior analysis as devised by Ivar Lovaas used aversives such as electric shocks to modify undesirable behavior in their initial use in the 1970s, as well as slapping and shouting in a 1987 study. Over time, the use of aversives lessened, and in 2012, their use was described as being inconsistent with contemporary practice. However, aversives have been continued to be used in some ABA programs. In comments made in 2014 to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, a clinician who previously worked at the Judge Rotenberg Educational Center claimed that all textbooks used for thorough training of applied behavior analysis include an overview of the principles of punishment, including the use of electrical brain stimulation. So it dives deeper here into concepts and terms and things like that. I'm going to jump past that and go over to a different article that is published on the Autism History Project in University of Oregon. So I am going to share this, and it goes into more background and history. Alright, here it states Applied Behavior Analysis, ABA, refers to labor-intensive one-on-one educational interventions with young children with autism. Its hallmark is breaking communication and interaction into their behavioral components in order to teach them systematically, one small behavioral task at a time. Many programs use highly structured environments saturated with rewards and occasionally punishments to teach the linguistic and social skills that most children learn simply by listening, watching, and imitating. ABA is widely accepted today in special education as well in clinical settings, in part because its procedures of careful documentation and measurement fulfill the mandate that interventions be evidence-based. It originated in the research of Charles Forster, Marion DeMeyer, Ivar Lovaas, and other learning theorists and behaviorists. During the 1960s, their work with autistic children was unconventional and controversial. It attracted both admiration and criticism. Reinforcement was a principle at the foundation of all behaviorist approaches, and it informed all of its teaching techniques. It was applied to even the most severely affected nonverbal and self-injurious autistic children. The apparent indifference of these children to their social environments posed enormous challenges to any kind of human connection, let alone learning. Researchers who championed behaviorism did not care why autistic children lived in worlds of their own or what caused autistic symptoms. They approached learning empirically and placed their trust in the experimental method. The pioneers of ABA argued that efforts to understand and shape human development required measuring and manipulating what could be directly observed behavior. Everything else was beyond the reach of scientific research, including the family's emotional climate, the history and quality of mother-child attachment, psychological factors located in the mind, and the brain's biology. Philosophically, ABA therefore offered an alternative to the dueling theories of psychogenesis and biogenesis. You hear that? The other two fronts of the Autism Wars in the autism community. Yep, here we are. In the field of animal behavior, training techniques featuring the reinforcement had been well established for decades. Even Pavlov's famous experiments in the 1890s showed that dogs could be trained to associate the sound of a bell with food and thereby conditioned to salivate when the bell rang. B.F. Skinner worked with a variety of animals in the 30s and 40s to show that a more complex behaviors could be shaped by deliberately varying the pattern of environmental responses or reinforcement schedules. During World War II, Skinner even showed that this technique, which he called operant conditioning, could turn pigeons into reliable missile guidance systems after he trained them to recognize and peck at pictures of targets. I'm going to jump back into this article in the next video and get deeper into applied behavior analysis and its history here. So it's a whole lot to process and take on. I know it is, and it's not particularly easy to process and understand either. So it's yeah. But there's more. So thank you for joining me and learning a bit more about autistic history.